So I'd like to welcome you guys here. Awesome to have you guys here with us and some of our tried and true live stream learners. Thank you guys holding it down from the four corners. So we're gonna be Ashley's here with me, and actually we're doing it in a little different spot. We're actually at my relative's place here outside of Phoenix because we're on the road already for shows, and so we were able to kind of set up this little renegade setup. So sorry for the delay. I was kind of getting the technology to work here in this new internet situation. But I think we got it, and hopefully the video is a little better too. I'm trying out a new trick using my phone as a camera, so I hope that helps. And I was trying to get you guys a camera 2 angle on the Didge, but that was actually not going to cooperate in time for our class today. So just bear with me though. I don't think we'll need it.
This meeting is being.
What was that, Maggie? Hey, all right. Hi, Maggie. Wow, that looks beautiful where you're at. Awesome. Well, I want to just let's just go around real quick, and as we like to do, just have each of you all just share maybe your name, where you're tuning in from, and what you're hoping to get out of this sesh today. Maybe like what, just briefly, like, what's alive for you right now, and we can just go around here in popcorn style. So go ahead, whoever is willing to jump in first.
Hey guys, I'll go ahead and go first. My name's Eric. I'm coming in from the foothills of Denver, just outside of Denver. And I would like to get some more skills and ability to just kind of put some ideas together with more Didge playing. And I'm grateful to be here. This is pretty cool. I've never taken a music lesson since middle school, like French horn back in the day. So whatever comes my way, I'm totally excited for. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, Eric. Yeah. Oh, and also share your experience about your Didge, where you're at with your Didge playing.
So I, doing outdoor education. I'm a teacher, and through outdoor education, traveling through Utah, California, I came across Didge playing, PVC, through just off and on playing, learned how to circular breathe, and about 10 years ago, I got my own Didge. It's an Aspen one that was made here in Colorado. I still got so much to learn with it. So I mean, like I said, bring on what you got.
Awesome. And let me know if you know how to circular breathe already or not. That'll help.
Sorry about that. Yes, I can circular breathe.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Eric. All right, Eric's brave first one. Who's going next? Go.
Yeah. I'm just having fun with music again. We can do more. No. It's just fun to move around and make noise with my voice right now, which somehow I took a long gap and got all stressed about music and took all the joy out of it, and now I'm just having fun. So I'm here to just be with y'all, and I'm excited to see Ashley and Poranguí after your. I hope we can hear a little harvest of what that was like, because you went out and did a brand new thing with the Beauty Way, and I would love to hear about that.
Beautiful, Chris. Thank you. I love it. I love the effects there. Sound like you're in the big cave. What tell us what where are you at with Didge, and have you I forget, like, kind of if you've had experience or if you've got circular breathing down yet or no, if you're at the beginning of the road.
Nada.
Say that again?
I haven't done any circular breathing, nothing.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
And I'm
Beautiful.
from Oaxaca. Hello from Mexico, everybody.
Yeah, Oaxaqueña. Oh, and also, did you, by the way, does everyone here, real quick, show of hands, did you bring a Didge today? Do you all have some form of Didge? Yeah, present. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. No, Chris, no. Byron, no. All right, do you have straws? Can you get a straw? Yeah, he's got a straw. Good. Can you get some kind of implement that's a tubular thing that you could blow or suck air through? If you, Chris, if you think of one in your house somewhere, just go and like get it while we're doing this. Just saying, just in
I'll
a
go right.
second here.
But I might just have to be a little participant right now.
That's okay, and if that's all good too. But if you can, get that. Beautiful. Next person. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, my name is Casey. I'm coming from Wisconsin. My experience with the Didge, I can't circular breathe. I can make sound, but that's pretty much it. I made this Didge in Hawaii when I was living there and carved it out, and I'd like to be able to really use it. But yeah, so I'm excited to learn some more.
Awesome, Casey. Welcome. Jump in, jump in.
All right, let me jump in. Porangui, Ashley, crew, it's good to be here. Yeah, man. So I've been playing didgeridoo for about 3 years. It was about 2018 when I first discovered this magical instrument. I'm coming from Australia, by the way, if you can tell from the accent. I'm on the western side of Australia in Perth. Not too far in some sense from the original location and origin, the source of the Yidaki. But I was actually over in the East Coast in Byron Bay. Some of you may know that place. And I was staying in a house and I was living in the bottom section and the owner was living in the top. And he had a didgeridoo. And I was there for a couple of months and he would play it in the evening and boom, this vibration would just come through the floor, you know. I was like, oh, what's that? I had no idea. I was playing hand pans. I was playing some flutes at that point. Never really come across a didgeridoo. And there was one in this bottom floor where I was staying, just sitting in the corner. And I just thought it was like ornamental. And he encouraged me to play it. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll give this a go. And sure enough, just started toning, started making some sounds. And after about 3 months of just sitting with it about 10 minutes per day, I started to get these little baby circles. I was like, oh, here we go, we're getting something. And then it just sort of clicked for me. And I've been circular breathing ever since then, and just going a lot deeper with toning over the top and getting some of those beautiful, really primordial deep sounds. What I really love about the didgeridoo, feels like you're opening up a time portal. So I'm glad to be here in this time portal as well with you guys, and yeah, looking forward to diving deep. It's always a pleasure to be here, and yeah, looking forward to this.
Thanks, Simon. Good to have you back, man. Yeah, beautiful, and I love it anchoring for us there in the beautiful Aussie land. So thank you for bringing the energies of the Yidaki with it. We're gonna it's really good. I'm glad because you have a lot more experience with it, so it's good. We kind of have everybody like full spectrum from like Chris to you, so that's gonna be really sweet. And then being able to share around that kind of different techniques and tips. So awesome, awesome. Welcome home. Who's next?
I'll jump in here.
Byron.
Hello, my name's Byron. I'm here from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and honored to be here. Thank you for doing this class. I am definitely looking forward to it, even though I feel like I'm coming a bit less prepared than I would have liked. But this last couple of months has been just super intense, and just went through a move, and after I really enjoyed your last class, and I know that you had given some tips on getting started with circular breathing, and perhaps I watched the video on making your own didge with the PVC, and was hoping to do something like that, or at least get started practicing some circular breathing and checking out some YouTube videos, but did not get to that, and also currently have a bruised rib, so haven't been able to do a lot of deep breathing at all, like the normal breath work that I practice. So anyway, I'm just hoping to absorb what I can today, and get started on just the basics, because after guitar, the didge is definitely one of the main instruments that does speak to me, and I feel the calling to it. So I'm just happy to be here, and thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you, Byron. Appreciate that. I'm glad you have that straw. That's gonna come in handy. Welcome, Leah. We're just going around right now, and everyone's popcorning in, just speaking a little bit about where they're tuning in from, their intention for today, their any experience level with the Didge that they have, and so just that's kind of where we're at right now. So, who's next?
Aloha, I'm Maggie.
Aloha.
I am in Ashland, Oregon. Really, really grateful to be here. I've been wanting to learn the Didge for so long. I had a really beautiful one, but I sold it when I moved to Hawaii. So I just got a little one from Amazon for today, and I can play it a little bit, but I don't have the circular breathing. So I would love some tips on that.
Fantastic. Yeah, we got you. We got you.
Yeah,
Welcome, Maggie. Good
thank
to
you.
have you with us. Who's next?
Hey everyone, I'm Austin. I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon, actually. This is my first live stream that I'm doing. Um, and yeah, I've been a musician my whole life and just kind of recently started doing sound journeys for people. And yeah, excited to get going with the didgeridoo because I've never done it before. So this is going to be a brand new experience for me.
Beautiful, Austin. Thank you for joining us, man. It's good to have you with
Yeah.
us. Yeah, that's great. We have like the four corners here fully represented. This is excellent. Who's next?
I'll go next.
Andrew.
All right. So this will be actually my last live stream call with you guys. So happy it's the Didge. My timeline for the didgeridoo, I was first introduced to it. So one of my friends had one when I was a kid. Didn't think much of it. The next time I discovered it was actually through your music, Poranguí. And then my sister had one sitting in her living room. She found it Goodwill for $25. And she let me borrow it to learn how to play. I had a pretty magical experience with it. And then I messaged you, Poranguí, on Facebook and asked you, hey, this is what happened. What do you make of this? And you said something about alchemy and keep playing. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's fucking interesting, but sure. And then I discovered how the Aborigines in the desert used to use it to find water or to raise water. So there's all kinds of weird magical shit going on with the didgeridoo, and I can circular breathe. Very excited for today's call, and I'm tuning in from Prescott, Arizona. So
Welcome. Thank you, Andrew. I'm curious, but later we can talk about why you're not going to be with us because obviously you got a lot more to learn. Let's
yeah,
keep playing. Let's keep playing. All right. Who's up next? Who hasn't gone? I think just Leah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So excited. I've been waiting for this very first live stream. I am about an hour north of Philadelphia in beautiful Bucks County, Pennsylvania. The Didge first found me when I was a little kid traveling in a Winnebago with my uncle through the Northwest. And I've just remembered it being a very powerful, potent way of kind of like activating my energy. And between all of the different kinds of sound healing music and Porangui's music, it's an instrument that really speaks to me. I couldn't be more new. I have my new Didge. I don't know what circular breathing is. I've done breath work, but basically so far I sound like an elephant that's dying around my house. That's the feedback that I've gotten. So only one way to go, which is up. Oh,
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. Well, awesome. We've got we'll get it sounding good. Don't worry. some,
okay.
some some people think something's dying, or that maybe you ate some really bad burrito. It's, all kinds of things like that. That kind of just goes with the territory. But I hope by the end of today we'll at least have each of you getting some new ways to play your instrument and kind of meeting your edge. So whether you're advanced player or whether you're a beginner. So that's my goal for today. Did we miss anybody, by the way, or did we get everyone? Yeah? I think, Ashley, do you want to tune in real quick, the crew?
Hey guys. Yeah, I think I get to leave my camera on today. There's much better internet here than our slow donut house. So he's right here. So yeah, really nice to see you all and feel connected. And yeah, maybe this will be the moment that I actually get my own didge playing to come online. We'll see. I've kind of overheard lots of lessons over the years, and I like tried to make a sound or two, and I'm like, oh, I suck at this. So I'm the example of don't let that voice keep you from. So who was it that said like 10 minutes a day for 3 months? That's the kind of thing that I know this instrument requires. So yeah, maybe this is my year for the didge. We'll see.
You all are hearing this. You're witness to this, okay? This is big.
He really wants me to play because apparently I have a little bit of a snore, and when I don't know if you know this, but playing the didge is one of the best things for repatterning snoring. So there you go. Nice to see you all.
Everyone will be happier and healthier if you play the didge. Mark my words, this is a very powerful instrument. Yes, you should have brought your partner. Oh my God, yeah. Well, you know, start here. We start here. We start where we're at. That's all we can do. Ashley is a great example, though. Like, you know, it's kind of like, what is it? The painter's house is never painted, you know, that kind of thing. Well, of course, the didge player's wife is like, no, I'm not playing that thing. And so I've been working on her for a long time, because this is really, truly a remarkable instrument. You know, Simon was speaking a little bit about it. You know, it's known by many names. Yadaki is one of the traditional Aboriginal names of it. But there's other names, and different communities, Aboriginal communities have different names for this instrument. But it is considered, historically, it was played by the men in men's rituals, and often in secret, and wasn't played. You know, so it was kind of a thing for women to start to play it. That's definitely more of a modern thing that's come into to be, as the didge has kind of left its Aboriginal home and traveled to other parts of the world. And I've heard I mean, we could have a whole dialogue just around that. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into that here. But just, you know, highlighting it for all of us, just to acknowledge and honor that this is a very sacred instrument that has very ancient roots, maybe some of the oldest roots, one could say, given our Aboriginal relatives and how far and unbroken those lineages go. So it's really an honor that I get to play this instrument, and that it's come into my life. I've been playing the didge here since I first came into me when I was in college, and I was given one, kind of like a couple of you mentioned. Like, I thought it was ornamental. It was kind of this, like, I think it was maybe from Indonesia, and it was painted really beautiful with dot artwork and everything. And I picked it up, and I tried to play it, and the guy gave it to me, and it was a gift. And I was playing, and I just couldn't make it do any, like, it was just like, took all this breath, and I was like, there's no way. I was like, maybe Aboriginal people have like larger lungs, and their genetics are just such that, you know, they can play this thing. And I literally gave up on it, and I put it in the corner of my room, and it stayed there, you know, all the way through the university. And actually, it's just like, as a decoration. You know, people be like, oh, you play that thing? I'm like, no, it's just, you know, it's just a beautiful instrument there. Only Aboriginal people play that thing, you know? And so fast forward about 6 years later, about 2006 or 7, I was hanging out in Sedona, Arizona, with a dear brother of mine who's a Brazilian, and he's a drummer, and we played a lot in a band together. And he was making didgeridoos out of agave, which is a way that comes from the Southwest, you know, the agave plant. I don't know if you're all familiar with this plant. Yeah, exactly. It's like that one that you have there, Andrew. And so the agave is a, you know, kind of mean-looking little aloe vera plant, you know, and then it spends most of its life until the rains and everything are right. And when it blooms one time in its life. And it can be anywhere from 35 to 75 years, so almost a human lifetime. And it blooms, and when it blooms, it puts up this flower. And that flower, after it goes to its seeds and everything, we can take that and carefully harvest it and actually hollow it out, and then you have the agave, or southwestern didge. And so he was making these things. My friend Felipe is his name. And I go like, wait a minute, you know how to play this? And he's like, oh yeah, it's great, it's easy. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, so when I saw that, it blew my mind, because I realized, oh, he's Brasileiro, and I know we share genetics. And so I was like, so it can't just be Aboriginal people. There must be a way to play this thing. And so he showed me this technique to make the circular breathing using a straw in a water and blowing bubbles. And we're going to do that briefly here for those of us who don't have the circular breathing down. And I'll talk more about this. But I started to do it, and in one day, I went home, and he let me borrow one of his didges, and I basically figured it out. I was just determined, and I just played and played and played and played, and all of a sudden I got it. And I haven't stopped playing now in all these years, and it's one of these instruments that continues to unfold itself, unveil itself. It has a lot of depth to it. It's kind of infinite, in fact. And that's why I kind of call it, it's not circular breathing, I like to call it spiral breathing, because you're really spiraling through time as you play this instrument. And you're learning how to breathe in this spiral way, which is really, really magnificent, because it unlocks other portals. So we'll talk more about that. One of the things that I was going to say is I took him that didge that I had that was in the corner of my room all those years, and I'm like, can you play this one? And he tried to play it, and he's like, Poranguí, like, you'll never get this to make music. Look, bro. And he showed me, like, this little crack right here on the bottom, that's leaking air. You'll never be able to circular breathe on this. And so little did I know that that was a prerequisite for this instrument. So to all of you, note, if you have a didge, whatever your didge, make sure you're checking it out and that it doesn't have any kind of leak, any kind of hole, anything like that. Because if it does, you're going to really struggle to make it play music, especially for circular breathing. You might be able to get like a tone out of it, but you won't be able to have enough back pressure to actually keep the sound going. So with that, just make a good note of that. I do like the PVC ones to learn on, just to say, especially if you don't have much money or if you just, it's quick and dirty. So I brought this example of a PVC one. This one is a simple, well, I guess it's not that simple. It's a little complex in that this is also a slide didge. Anyone familiar? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of a slide didge. Yeah, okay. Couple of you? Okay, cool. So, yeah, that's right. That one right there. Nice, Simon. You got a nice one. So this is a very simple one. So you can kind of see this. This is manufactured. I was gifted this actually, but it has a little flare, a little bell on the end, and then it kind of goes to just a regular tube, and then at the other end, it has a tube inside of a tube. So you pull that out, and you get a slide didge. And what's cool about a slide didge is that you can basically get many didges in one. So a didgeridoo typically, right, and traditionally was made out of eucalyptus wood. The Aboriginal people, in fact, wouldn't actually make it. In the old school, my understanding that I've learned from my teachers is that they would actually go on a walkabout, and they would go and knock on different didgeridoo. When they needed one, they'd knock on different eucalyptus trees and different branches, and they'd listen, and when they hear it was hollow and just about the right size, they'd break it off, clean it up, and fix up the mouth, and it was be eaten out by termites. And so they actually wouldn't make it. It was the termites that would make this instrument, which I think is really beautiful when you think about that, right? Our relationship, right, to the natural kingdom. Something that actually is gifted like that, created by another being, another sentient being, and then turned into music. So it's really beautiful like that. So that's the eucalyptus didges, the old way, if you will. And my understanding too is that they wouldn't hold on to it like the way we do instruments. Like you play it, they'd have their ceremony, and they'd leave it there. Because they're like, why am I going to carry this big heavy branch all over the place, when I have to walk on a walkabout? I'm not going to accumulate material possessions. So just another beautiful teaching, of like how we've come to be so attached to our material things. So I always really, really love acknowledging and remembering those pieces around this instrument. So the PVC one, right? You've got PVC, it's just a tube. What's nice, at least it doesn't have a leak in it, for sure. So that's what's kind of cool if you're working, any of you have a PVC didge. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, there are different ways that you can kind of bend them. Who got to see the video that we shared up about how to make your own? Did anyone check that out? Yeah? Okay, a couple of you. Beautiful. So highly recommend, just like if you want, it's an easy way to make your own. You can paint it, you can decorate it, you can do a lot of things with it like that. And it's reliable and it's indestructible virtually. So check that out as an option, especially Chris, and I know a couple of you don't have an instrument yet, so that might be a nice option for you. I think Maggie, you said you picked one up on Amazon. Is that a PVC one maybe? Is that like a Meinl or one of those? Oh, it's a wood one. Oh, it's a beauty. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, and there you go. Go ahead and hold that up to the camera again. So this is a good example of a beeswax mouthpiece. So if you make it out of PVC or if you even out of wood, often didges will use beeswax on the mouth. Beeswax is really nice because it's like you can form it to your mouth shape, right, and kind of fit your lips right. Some people like to play with a larger aperture, a larger hole, or a smaller one. Kind of depends on your lips, your mouth, and kind of also playing techniques. That can also vary. But the beeswax is nice because it naturally is antimicrobial. and so it's actually pretty safe to use, if you will. Generally speaking, just cleanliness and stuff. I recommend Didge is one of those instruments. It's pretty intimate. You're gonna get a lot of saliva all over it. That's just, you can't avoid that. So just to say, like, it's like Didges are kind of those things, like share your Didge with a person you kiss and make out with, because you're basically doing that. So just something to keep in mind. Some people are like, oh yeah, everyone play my Didge, but teach their own, I guess, if that's how you roll. So with that, slide many Didges in one. So what does that mean? A didgeridoo, basically the physics of this instrument. It's a wind instrument. It's essentially like similar to like a tuba, and that a tuba, you're using a looser embouchure. So that means the shape of your mouth is what we call embouchure. And so in with the tuba, as opposed to like a horn, a trumpet, say, where you have a tight embouchure, your lips really tight. With the didge, you're going generally to make the fundamental tone of the instrument. You want your lips really loose, like. So you're trying to really relax your mouth and your lips, and you're gently smiling, so that you're kind of pulling these two rubber bands of your two lips slightly taut, so that they vibrate with the least amount of air. And so you can get this nice, like, kind of motorboat sound. And you're going to do that inside the instrument. Now, the length of the instrument and the girth of the instrument determines the volume of air inside of it. And so that's going to create your fundamental pitch. So the key that we're working with is going to be based on that. So you really want to, I would invite you all to, you kind of figure out the key, if you haven't yet, of the instrument you're playing. A slide didge, I have many keys because I can change the length of the instrument instantaneously. That's why I say it's like having many didges in one. So it's kind of nice. So I can tune my didge within a certain range of notes to play with whatever music, to play with other musicians. And so it's really handy, when you're in a musical context a lot. For someone who's beginning, probably don't recommend it. It's probably too much to track. I mean, if you just want to jump into the deep end, then go for it. But yeah, it's perfectly fine just working with a fixed length. And I brought an example of that today with this agave one. So this one, like the one that Andrew was showing, this is made from agave. Let's see if you can see this guy. This bell comes out of the bottom of, it's a really beautiful bell. And this was burned out. The guy who made this, Rob, isn't that last name? Spacing his last name right now. But he's out of Santa Fe. And this is, he uses a technique that's pretty hardcore. He actually burns it out with coal. And drills it out rather than splitting it. A lot of people will split the didge, like down the middle, and then they kind of carve out the pith in the middle. Same thing with the eucalyptus. They might carve it out, and then they glue it back together, the two halves, and then wrap it and use it like a glue and epoxy to seal it. The deal with that is it kind of weakens the structure of the instrument, so it's because it technically has a seam, which could potentially break or split, and even resonate or vibrate and create like an extra buzz. Generally, that's not too musical and it's not desired. So this technique is much harder, and that means you have to go in and hollow out the instrument from the inside out, which is much more work, but it's incredible because you have this solid instrument. He still seals it with an epoxy, which is really good for durability. So it can get wet. I've taken this instrument out with me into the canyons, like backpacking, like, trekking through crazy places, and it's held up for, a long time. So recommend that. On the mouthpiece, I'll talk briefly about this kind of mouthpiece. This one is made of an epoxy. I had to replace my beeswax because I'm in the desert. And if anyone's been in the desert, you know how hot it gets in your car. And unfortunately, that beeswax did not last and ended up all over my things. And so if you are in a hot environment, be mindful of your beeswax instrument parts. And I replaced it with this. This is called PNC 11. And it's a hard epoxy. I set it up, I shaped it to my mouth, and then it's amazing because it never needs to be maintained at all. It stays put right there. You can see kind of turned this white color. But this thing has lasted me for ages and is virtually indestructible. What's that? Oh, PNC 11. PNC 11 is the name of this epoxy. And that was actually a pro tip from the didge maker who invented, if you will, the agave didge. That's what I made the mouthpiece out of. It's a type of epoxy that I use for the mouthpiece. Yeah, PNC 11. There's other epoxies. If you were to make your own agave didge, just to say this briefly, there are more ecological epoxies I highly recommend you use. Try to avoid the real toxic stuff, both for you and the environment. This stuff can get really gnarly. It's like, yeah, it's pretty hardcore material. But yeah, and definitely make sure you get permission when you go and you harvest an agave. Make sure you shake all those seeds out. Be sure it's already gone to its full bloom. There are people that go out and just cut them down and don't do that in a good way, and it causes a lot of damage, you know? So just invite that kind of consciousness as you do that and make an offering if you can. I was going to share you guys about the guy who created that, who kind of invented the agave didge. A beautiful man from Tucson, and he was someone who, yeah, kind of mentored me and was a friend of ours, and he had a couple Aboriginal people who came out from Australia actually, who spent time with him here in the desert, and they went on a walkabout out in the desert here. His name's Alan Shockley, and he went out with them, and they saw the agave, and they told him, and they said like that can work, and so and he went through this whole process with them, asking for their blessing to be able to make this and kind of start that. And then it became a thing, and people started, replicating it. But he was the OG out of Tucson, Alan Shockley, incredible human being. And we lost him a few years back, unfortunately. But a really, really amazing human. And I was really blessed to know him. And he made didges out of agave, where he would cut the agave into multiple pieces, and he would make like a spiral agave didge, which was really cool. Not the ones you see carved from like Bali, but actually like from agave and making the joints and everything. It was really cool. Just so you know a little of that history there. And I don't know, Simon, do you want to share anything briefly too, just about the history on your end? Just curious, since you're right there in the motherland.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, from my understanding of speaking to a few Indigenous people here, so I'm in Perth, which is right down in the southwest corner of Western Australia. The Yolngu people who live in Arnhem Land, which is sort of in the Northern Territory. So it's actually about 2,500, 3,000 kilometers from Perth. You look at Australia and you think it's wider than it is, taller, but it's actually quite tall from the top to the bottom. So pretty far from them. But the maker who I get my didgeridoos from, I have two of them. He goes and connects with the Yolngu people in the north, in Arnhem Land. And he's told me a few stories about how they create them, and how each one has its own ceremony in a way, as it's sort of birthed into the world. And Porangui spoke to this already, but they'll go on a walkabout, they'll look for those trees, and the one that sort of resonates with them, they harvest that and cut that. I have two. This one is made from ironbark, which is one of the eucalyptus trees. And this actually plays in the key of D. And interestingly enough, it tunes to a 4-3-2 D, which I thought was kind of interesting because maybe that settles the debate on the 4-3-2, 440. I don't know. Not going to say anything about that. But I do have one more, which I'd like to just show you. Just over here. So this one's a different kind of eucalyptus, and you can see it's painted. And this is with the catfish, as well as some ornamental dots. And this is from a place called Karatha, which is up again in the northern part of Australia. And they paint it with the animals that are in that area, in that region locally. And the idea being that that animal's spirit is somewhat sort of infused into the didgeridoo, into the yidaki as its birth. So there is this whole process of, connecting with the tree, harvesting that limb of the tree, if you will, that branch of the tree, infusing it with some of the native animals, native flora, fauna, through the painting, through the artwork. And then there's also a smoking ceremony that usually happens with each didgeridoo. So for it to be birthed, it's sort of this beautiful harmony between the indigenous people that are living there in the land, as well as the tree that's created the wood and all of the creatures, the wildlife in the area. And that all comes through. And when you play it as well, you can somewhat feel that, and maybe it's just the fact that there's all these harmonies and harmonics that sort of resonate through, which I'm sure Porangui might speak to, but you can really feel like as I play, especially this one, this is in a B flat, it's a lot lower, and I'll use this often for ceremony. You can really feel like there's an aliveness to the instrument, which might be in part because of the way that it's birthed. So yeah, that's one thing that I've learned about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Simon. Yeah, that's really beautiful. The one thing to complement that is in, I wonder if you've heard this there when you've been with the elders there, is I was told that in their creation myth, they believe that it was actually creator played all of life through the Yidaki. Um, all the animals came into form from that primordial sound of the didgeridoo. That's something that I've been told. Have you ever heard that story?
Yeah, most definitely. I guess it's sort of akin to the Sanskrit Om, which is coming out of India. So
Yeah.
our version of it here in Australia for the Indigenous people is that primordial Om through the didgeridoo, which to me feels like it's not just a human voice, it's this
Right.
pairing, it's this synchronicity between the voice, the breath, and this living, piece of wood infused with everything from the land, which comes through to create that creation, really potent sound. So a lot of medicine for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have heard that. Yes, yeah, and it feels like it when you play it. It's like boom, I'm right
It's
back
there.
there in this moment of creation. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it takes you back to the source of all things, and
Yeah.
I felt that as well. Um, well, thank you for sharing that, Simon. Do you want to compliment something? Yeah, Ashley.
I just wanted to share too. I love the connection of all these creation stories. I noticed from some of our elders that we work with in Colombia, um, through their weavings, which are all these sacred patterns and what they call original principles, like the principles of life. One of the patterns is a spiral, and they say that that spiral is the creation story, and that that spiral came through the form of sound. And so I know, Poranga, you'll probably come back to it more, but the way you even described the circular breathing as a spiral breath, because not only is it circular, but it's moving through time and space. So I love the connections between all of these stories, how they're all related to the sound and the sacred geometry.
Yeah, no
Just
coincidence here.
one
No
more
coincidence.
piece, if I can add to that as well. Something that I have been told here from Indigenous people with that spiral breath, when you're playing it, there is also a spiral in the energy flow, because you're breathing the energy, from the belly, and it's rising up, flowing through the adaki, through the didgeridoo, back into the earth, because you would traditionally play this, with it rested, with the bell, with the end of it on the earth. It's resonating the earth, and then you're feeling the vibrations resonating through the earth coming up through your feet, which then comes back to the belly, to the breath, and it's that circular spiral motion as well, which maybe is in part why it feels so grounding for people as well. Just wanted to add
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Absolutely. No, and that's very accurate. Um, so let me talk a little bit about the physics of it, and then we'll get into the techniques. Yeah, I'm just kind of getting us going. There's a lot. I mean, as you guys can see, like it's such a deep instrument on so many levels. But I'll talk about the physics. So I mentioned to you guys a little bit about the parts of the didge. Yeah. So you have kind of the mouthpiece at one end, right? And we talked about that, different types of mouthpieces from beeswax to, actual using an epoxy, say. You can also make your mouthpieces out of wood. There's a lot of didges that will do that. I know different didgeridoo makers that use woods. And you could just sand it if you had, even bamboo. There's bamboo didges that I've had. I don't have them with me now, but I'm just taking the cell, where the cells are in between the different segments of a bamboo, and finishing that off and sanding it, and you've got your mouthpiece built into the didge like that. So there's different ways. You have the mouthpiece, you have the main chamber, or the tube, if you will, of the didge, right, where most of the action is happening, if you will, of the compression. There's actually, this is the main air chamber, and then you have the exit where that'll be out the bell, often in a bell shape or as some kind of flare, but it doesn't have to be. It could also be just, just comes out the same as it does through the main shaft. Um, those are your main kind of, the anatomy of the didge. What's happening is that, to speak briefly to the physics of it, is that you have this chamber of air, right, which determined by the length and the girth, as I mentioned. You're exciting the air with your lips, okay, and your breath. And as that breath enters and is being excited and resonated by the lips, that like kick starts a vibrational energy that is then exciting the air through the whole chamber. And when that happens, that air, as you're blowing out through your mouth, it actually pushes back. And we call this back pressure. Okay, and this back pressure is actually what allows us to do this technique known as circular, or what I call spiral breathing. And it's beautiful because it's pushing back on you. And so the longer the didge, so to speak, or the bigger the air chamber, right, the more air pressure it takes you to be able to have something push back on you. So it takes more strength from you, if you understand what I mean. The shorter the didge, right, or another example is a trombone, or excuse me, a tuba versus a trumpet. When we play a trumpet, it's much smaller, so the pressure is much higher. So it's pushing back with more energy against you, against your lips. And so it allows you to play higher notes in that process, but also it's harder to like push against it, if that makes sense. It's much more is pushing back. With the didge, it less is pushing back. And when you get with a really long didge, right? Imagine super long, like a low A. Simon was just talking about the B flat. When you get into like an A or lower than an A, which you rarely see, is because that actually is really hard to play because it takes so much to push the air, because not a lot is pushing back on you. So it's harder to keep the circular breathing, the spiral breathing going. So just to kind of explain that, the bell at the end, if you have a bell, can help actually the harmonics as they exit the instrument, give them some room to really open up and amplify the sound. It kind of acts like a little speaker box, if you will. So it helps it to get a little bit louder if you're going for that. For the person playing it, doesn't really make a difference. With any didge, you may have noticed, for those of you who played it, is that the sound, most of the sound you're hearing is actually happening inside of your head before it even leaves the instrument. You're feeling it, conduction through your lips, through your head, and through that chamber actually of your instrument. You're already hearing it, you're already feeling it. So when you want to hear it kind of played back to you, it's actually helpful to play into like the corner of a room, or into like, say, a cave, or have a wall or some reflective surface that will send that sound back to you. I actually have a buddy who created this really crazy device where he set up these a flexible tube that comes back into two cones that he puts on headphones so that he could hear himself playing the didge and kind of like didge himself. It's a really hilarious looking device, but it actually works. And so he puts it on, puts it on other people, and he's playing it and like puts it right into your ears. But of course, it's really lovely. Maybe you guys have seen this, or one of my shows, to play the didge over another person. And in this way, you're sending those vibrations. Then it's like you can move the didge over someone's body, and they can feel that vibration too over their body. But again, it starts, for the player, it's healing within and it's healing without. And one of the things I noticed back on that fateful day when I first started getting my circular breathing, I was mentioning to you guys, I didn't tell you this part of the story. I had one of those old LED clocks. You guys know those ones with the big red numbers? If anybody know what I'm talking about? They have the big red numbers on it. And I don't know if you know this about LEDs, but the old school LED clocks, they're actually flashing. They're diodes that like flash on and off really fast, but the human eye can't tell, and so they look like they're solid. Well, I'm playing the didge, and I'm starting to get it going. I just started circular breathing. I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing. And I look over to the clock, and I see the numbers are like dancing, and they're all freaking out. And I'm like, wow. And I stop, and I look at it, and they're all still. And I start playing, and they're all dancing, like freaking out. And I'm like, this is so cool. I'm making the LEDs freak out. And so I tell my girlfriend at the time, like, hey, babe, come over here. Come check this out. And she walks in, and she's like, you've been at this all day. Like, what do you want? And I'm like, look at the clock. And I'm like, brrr, at the clock, and like, you see that? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't see the numbers? And it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, the didge is vibrating the optical nerve. I'm vibrating so much at the sound that I'm able to see the flashing, the flickering of the LED. So it's really cool like that. So just something to invite you all into that awareness field. As you play this instrument, you're actually being attuned and entrained to the frequency of the instrument, and you're actually able to perceive and feel things that you can't normally do. So it is actually bending reality. It's changing actual physical form. Really beautiful through sound, and you get to experience that through your body. One of the health benefits, which Ashley alluded to, which is incredible, there's actually a clinic in Europe that works with this, with the Yidaki. I think they're in the clinic. I think it's in Austria, if I'm not mistaken. There's a documentary about it, and I can try to find the link to it. It's an old video from 10 years ago. But it's really cool because they actually clinically proved that circular breathing, also just making the sound with the didge, right? And they just use like PVC tubes that are clear, and they have it set up to machines. People are like, it's like a clinic for treating sleep apnea. And it totally was more effective, statistically more effective than surgery or than any device to treat sleep apnea. So I think that's really says a lot, you know? It's like, you know, you can go get surgery, which creates scar tissue, right? More scar tissue in your body. Or you can go use a device every night you stick in your mouth to help you not like collapse your epiglottis and your throat collapse. Or you could learn to play this instrument that it actually is healing and actually inspiring and fun. So I highly recommend this approach. If any of you struggle with snoring, fortunately I don't, and I think this has helped me a lot with it. So something to also keep in mind and to share it also with others in that way. What's happening also scientifically is medically, you're strengthening all the fascia in your throat. And as you circular breathe, you're also strengthening muscles that we don't generally strengthen as you do this, as you're repeatedly doing this. And that prevents the sagging of the fascia and the epiglottis, so the tissue holding the back of your throat there, that flap. So pretty cool. Any questions on any of that? Ah. It does help singing. Yeah, it does help singing, absolutely. It helps a lot of things. So to speak to that, breath work, and many of you have done breath work, I'm sure, you know, is really powerful with this instrument because you're strengthening your diaphragm and your ability to connect to your diaphragmatic breathing, which is the core of everything. And for those of you who you weren't, maybe you can catch the replay of the past classes, but we talked a lot about the breath and like strengthening the breath, strengthening the diaphragm, and how it helps our singing, how it helps everything, gives us more energy. So highly recommend. I think I hear a noise. What is that? Oh, it's Chris. Okay. All good. I thought someone was gonna ask a question. So really helps, gives us energy, energizes the body. It also helps to open up our parasympathetic nervous system, so you're able to drop back into your center point. If you're feeling stress, anxiety, anger, I can't tell you, like this instrument, I can play it for 3 minutes if I'm all worked up in a frenzy. In 3 minutes, I'm back into like total zen, grounded, calm, authentic self, not triggered trauma, crazy, losing my shit self. So highly recommend this instrument for all of those things and more. So with that, I think I convinced y'all you should really give this your time and energy and attention. So let's get in it.
A question.
Yeah, go.
I had a client that was working with Didge, and she was using it therapeutically with herself. It was bringing up a lot of old emotions that were super stuck. So just to be aware, if you play Didge and it is sort of like bubbling up some stuff, that's what it is. It's not random, and it is very helpful. But it is so powerful. It'll like maybe bring up a bubble of something, and just to be aware, that's a thing that can happen, and there's nothing wrong. It's totally a good part of the process.
It is, you know, and actually just to speak to it, and I haven't, you know, had this conversation with any of my Aboriginal relatives, which is something I'm curious about. But I have an intuition that there's reasons why this was only played by men, and you know, for certain ceremonies, and it wasn't like widespread. I think because it does stir deep stuff. You know, you're working with primordial creative energy, which that kind of creative energy, it has a masculine yang energy to it. You know, it's very powerful. So I think you do want to do this with a lot of reverence, a lot of presence, a lot of care. I just really invite that as you guys dive into this instrument. Beleza? What's that? No, I think women can definitely handle it. I'm not implying that. Ashley's like, are you implying women can't handle? No, not at all, at all. Women handle a lot. Matter of fact, I'm here as proof that women can handle a lot. From my mom to my partner, so I'm definitely not implying that. Just saying it's strong. It's a very strong thing. So just handle it with a lot of care. You know. So with that, I want to kind of talk about. So there's a couple ways we can do this. This instrument is a beautiful example of the power of layering. And I've talked about layering here before, right? As we've talked about different instruments. This instrument specifically is all about layering. And so when I say about layering is that you create the polyrhythm of life through this instrument. It's very simple, right? It's just a tube. There's no crazy moving parts to this thing. I mean, the slide didge is slightly a little more complicated, but it's basically just a tube. And so it's really about what this tube allows you to do as an instrument. right? It's empowering you to be able to open up something and create a field, a primordial field that's truly magical, that's truly transformational and healing, and hence why I can get up and bring up all the things like Chris is alluding to. So the first layer is the breath layer, right? So we're going to be breathing from our diaphragm, as we've been talking about. We're going to be cultivating just how to breathe and how to connect to our breath in a way maybe we've never done before. That in itself is super healing. The second layer is learning then to, on top of that, once we have the breathing technique, is then to then connect this breathing technique and to create that spiral breath. Okay, that's kind of like layer 2. So layer 1 is really just the breath, the exhale, the inhale and the exhale. Layer 2 is going to be connecting that so that it becomes seamless. Layer 3 is then learning how to make that work in a rhythmic way, being able to play with groove and use that groove, actually like the rhythm of our own, the cadence of our breath, to then create different rhythms and to entrain into those rhythms. We might play fast, we might play slow, we might play a polyrhythm using that, and so that gets really complicated already just with that. Then the next layer that we can then start to add is to then include other, I mean, you could also take it off to other instruments, for instance, start to play with like a shaker in your hand, play with the clack sticks while you're playing the didge, there's that kind of layering. But just with the instrument alone for now, let's just focus there. You can then start to add your tongue and use of your tongue, use of the overtones and the harmonics in your mouth as a layer on top of the rhythmic layer, on top of the breath. Okay, so you kind of see where I'm going with this. After you finish that, you have yet another layer, which is going to get into using your voice and your vocal cords, and you start to vocalize. Okay, that's like yet another layer. Now you can use all these layers together, and the next layer beyond that is called what we call tooting. Tooting is kind of a funny word, but tooting. And so a toot on the didge is where we kind of use a different embouchure technique, where we get into like kind of what a horn player might do. With a tighter embouchure, you can actually tap into the main harmonics of the didge, and you can play other notes beyond just the fundamental note of the didgeridoo. So like, he was saying like his is in the key of D. This agave here is in the key of D, for instance, okay? So I can also add then these toots on top of it to create more percussion and to have other sounds that I have within my repertoire to make music with it, right? So you have these multi-layers, and all of those can be used simultaneously to create a very complex instrument that's, as complex as any other instrument in the world, and you just have a tube. So I really love that about it, is that it's like, it seems so simple, and it is, and you can access it at ground one just by breathing, but you can take it, I mean, there's realms that I've not reached that I'd love to still go, that I'm still refining. So it's like, for me, it's like a lifelong instrument that you continue to refine and deepen through just spending time with it. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to get into practice, is just invitation to all of you to know this instrument requires dedication and determination. You're not going to learn how to play this instrument if you think you're just going to pick it up every once in a while. You won't actually learn how to play it. Like, you have to really sit with this instrument and give it your love and give it your attention. And like that 10 minutes, at least a day, I would say. And in the beginning, I would give it more. Take it with you, spend time with it, keep going. But you have to be determined, because you're going to want to give up. I did. I gave up. It was like 7 years I lost that I could have been deepening this relationship. But I just gave up because I thought, oh, I can't do it. I don't have the genetics. So just inviting that kind of tenacity with this instrument. It really requires it. Beleza? So let's get in it. So the first thing is just to get the circular breathing. Any questions on what I've said so far? Awesome. So let's get into this. You all have anyone who's still learning the circular breathing. Some of you already know this technique, so you don't have to do this, but if you'd like to, join us. Those of you who don't, you need a cup, and I think I said this in the prereqs for the class. Get a straw and a little bit of water. Like this. And I got my little pink straw. Thanks, Ashley.
Our niece tried to hijack the straw right before the class started.
My little niece. She's like, oh, I like the straws. So the straw and the water is great, is a way to just start to think about what circular breathing is about, because you have to learn a new sequence of muscles, okay? This isn't normal breathing. And you don't need the straw, by the way. You can do this without it. And so those of you who don't have it, I'm going to show you how to do it without. Those who do, let's go ahead and use it, right? Because it's really helpful, just kind of helps our brain. Reason being is that it's much less back pressure. It's very easy to blow into a straw and to start to get the mechanics of it. So let me explain the mechanics really quick. There's 3 parts to the spiral breath. You have the exhale, which we all know how to do, right? You're just exhaling. So you take a deep breath in. We're always, every time I talk about breathing with this, we're talking about diaphragmatic breathing. So for anyone who doesn't know, that means we're going to breathe into our belly, down into our dantian. We've talked about this in past classes. So everyone feel your belly button right now. Put your finger on there. And let's just take a few deep breaths in through the nose and exhale out the mouth. And in through the nose. Breathe in. And I want you to really feel your breath expanding in your belly. Feel your belly button push out. Feel your sides and your back, your kidneys expand, and then let it go. For the Didge, we're always going to be exhaling out the mouth. Air is always coming out the mouth. Okay? So in through the nose, out through the mouth. That's going to be the constant flow that we're working with. Breathing in, let it go. So you know this one. That's the exhale. The second breath is going to be how we inhale. So we want to fill up our breath. We're going to sniff in through the nose, and I'm going to liken it to when you sniff like roses. Think about when you smell rose and you just go, it's like a strong sniff, right? It's like, oh, just taking all that in. So just go ahead, everyone try this. Big sniff in, and you send it straight to your diaphragm, all the way to the bottom of the tank, if you will. And so your belly's full, okay? Belly's totally full right now, meaning belly full, diaphragmatic breath. Diaphragm pushes down. It literally pushes the belly out to get out of the way, so it extends it. Doesn't mean you're fat, so don't get self-conscious. So you fill that up, and then exhale out the mouth. Okay? So in through the nose, fills up the belly, exhale out the mouth. Okay, good. So there's the 2 breaths. The third part now is we're going to connect them. And so we're going to do this first without the straw and the bubbles so that everyone can just be on the same page with this technique if you don't have it, okay? Which is a few of you. So we're going to breathe in, and for this technique, we're going to have to use our lips, tighten our lips, okay? So go like, and we're going to exhale out the mouth, using our lips like a proverbial didge. We won't have the didge here. So we're going to use a tighter embouchure than what we'll use in the didge. This embouchure is just going to be enough to give us more like a horn a little bit, more like this. So everyone try that. Okay? And now we're going to fill our cheeks up always. The cheeks act as a bellows. So they act like a temporary storage tank, okay? Just like a bagpipes uses like a bellows to keep the bagpipe going. Our cheeks are acting like the bag part of the pipes, okay? So we're going to fill up the cheeks like this. And everyone, for this one, use your hands mechanically to push the air out, okay? Okay, everyone try that. Nice, and do it slow if you can. As long as it's like slow that down. And while you do that, I want you to sniff in your nose. That's rose, like you're sniffing roses. So now your belly should be full again, okay? But you just made a sound. So let's do that again, okay? Fill up your cheeks and then sniff in while you push the cheeks out. Now you're full, so now go to exhale. Okay, so you're just exhaling out. Now, I'm going to use my hand here like to represent the tank of air, okay, the capacity of our lungs. As I breathe in, I'm going to push it out my cheeks. And before I run out of breath, before I actually hit to the empty, so when I'm at like 40%, say, I'm going to then sniff in again while I use that technique of like my cheeks pushing out. Let's do it with just the muscles of our cheeks, okay? And I'm going to fill it up back up temporarily. So it looks like this, okay? Okay, I'm filling it up. Does that make sense? And so as I do that, now we're going to connect them together, and then it becomes one continuous thing. So the new thing that you have to get here is this layered breath. And the layered breath is I'm squeezing air out of my cheeks while I sniff in at the same time. So we tried it with our hands. Let's just break it down because I know it can get a little confusing. So let's just break it down and keep it real simple. Now everyone, fill your air up in your cheeks like a chipmunk and push out. And I invite you to use your jaws when you do this like you're chewing bubble gum, okay? It actually helps. So like literally feel your teeth like you're chewing bubble gum and your mouth is closing. That helps to push the air out of your mouth. And you'll use this in the didge too. And sniff in, fill it up. Now slow it down. Nice and slow. The reason why we do the slow is it helps you, gives your brain more time to think about, oh, I got to sniff right now. Because you want to be sniffing while your mouth is closing and you're squeezing the air out. Okay? That's the new layered thing. So slow it down. The slower you go until your brain gets like, oh, I got it. So you can sniff in while you squeeze the air out. Exhale out. Exhale out. This is the new thing. You just filled up your tank and now just let it go for now. Okay, I'm just exhaling out normal. You're filling it up. So now every time you fill up your air, every time you breathe in, this is how you breathe in from now on forward for the rest of your life. This is how you're going to breathe in, okay? You're learning this new way of breathing. It's breathing where you're sniffing in while you push air out of your mouth mechanically. So this is mechanically pushing that out. That was interesting. Here we go once again. Everyone try it. It's so funny because I'm doing it all alone. I don't hear you all, but I believe you're doing it. Do it again. Here we go. Okay, one more time. Now I'm full. My tank is full. And now I'm just going to switch to breath one. Breath one is just the exhale, right? And so I just continue with my embouchure, and it sounds like this. Now I'm going to run out of breath, but before I run out of breath, I'm going to switch to the new breath that we just learned, the layered breath in, which sounds like this. So this is the amount of air in my tank. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of crazy.
Very
Go ahead.
Very irritating.
So that is how you do it without the straws. So that's the crash course that I teach anybody on the street when they're like, how do you do that thing? And I'm like, I can show you real quick. That's how you do it real quick. So there's basically these three parts. You're just exhaling. You know how to do that with your lips tight. And then you're inhaling by sniffing in. But the new thing is that you inhale while you sniff in, squishing the air in your mouth out. And then all you're going to do now is connect those together by just doing it before you run out. In other words, keep your cheeks always full. So in your mind, just think, I always got to have my cheeks full of air, always. Like, so even when I'm squishing down and chewing and pushing it out, you know, I'm refilling it right away so that it engages. There's always pressure pushing out of my lips. And that's what keeps the lips vibrating and the didge playing. And in fact, it's easier to do this on the didge than it is to do what we just did. But it's good for you. I want you to see it, kind of what's happening, you know, so you can see the mechanics of it. And if you can start to just practice this, I can do this when I'm driving the car, when I'm, you know, just chilling out, you know what I mean, by myself. It's kind of weird when you're with people around and you start doing it, but I highly recommend just like play with it. It's really amazing. It helps through beatboxing. Like my beatboxing's gotten better with this technique. I mean, it's a lot of ways that you can apply this to other instruments too. Native American flute that we went over in previous classes, I can play those infinite notes, you know, like Kenny G. You just keep playing. You know, that's how he's doing it. And it's actually easier. It takes more air with the didge. So let's go real quick, jump over to the straw and the bubbles, which is way easy, okay? So those of you who have one, get your cup of water. You don't want the cup too full. If you get too full of water, you're going to put water all over yourself and the floor. So just a little bit of water, and then we're gonna blow bubbles, okay? And the goal here is don't let the bubbles stop. Bubbles want to be continuous, okay? So bubbles are always flowing. And so you're gonna do the same thing. We blow bubbles, you're exhaling normal. Remember, this is my air, my oxygen level in my tank of my lungs. And then you're gonna take a little sniff in. It's like a little, same exact technique, right? In that in this one, you don't need a lot of big cheek action. You don't need to do a big jaw because you'll blow too much bubbles and they'll just splash yourself. So just little ones. So I'm doing like little chewing action, just tiny ones, okay? Versus the big ones we were just doing. And I'm gonna represent my tank here, okay, with my hand, and just watch as I do this. And now what's cool about this, I got water all over myself, is that as you do this, you're gonna find that it gets easier and easier to get the seam, to make it seamless, right? That's where it like connects it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect this and to make it into that loop, that kind of, infinite loop. And it's that seam when we have to breathe is the tricky part, right? But it's actually not that hard. It's just repetition, you guys. And I just say again, just keep doing it. It's one of those things. It's much like balance on a bike. When you're a little kid, if any of you remember, and the adults were trying to explain to you, balance is this. Like you try to explain like what balance is, right? No one can really tell you. It's like you just got to get on that thing and keep pedaling. And all of a sudden, you just keep pedaling. You fall a bunch of times, right? But that one time, everyone remembers when you just kept pedaling, and somehow you're like, it's going, and then all of a sudden, and you crash. You forgot how to learn how to brake. And so I just really encourage you, just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and suddenly you'll just get it. And sometimes it happens really quick, and sometimes it takes a little time. But the biggest challenge with this whole process, honestly, is the mind. It's the inner critic, which we've talked about. I think a lot of us, right? We've talked about this inner critic. If you've worked with me before, the heyoka, the little clown, the trickster, and it's that voice in our head that gets online and starts saying, "Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you suck. Oh, da da da." Just tell that voice, "So what? So what? So what?" And then start blowing again. Beleza? So that's getting you with the circular breathing. Now, for the sake of time, because everyone's going to take time with this, and I'm going to take some questions, I am going to move into the instrument itself, just so that those who already play the didge and those of you who have a didge also have an opportunity to kind of try that out. And this will still be cool stuff for others who are still learning, that this will be stuff you'll then apply here as you get to that next level. Cool? Go ahead. Any questions? Go ahead, Simon. Or Eric? Eric.
Oh, go ahead, Eric, if you want. Yeah.
Right on. I was just going to say the glass half empty full is new to me. That'll be fun to work with. But I wanted to throw out like something that I did preliminary to that you addressed, but helped me out was in the shower. Fill up your mouth with water and like breathe in and then spew that water out while you're in the shower. That helped me get that idea of like, oh, that's how it goes there too. Just a different kind of tack on what Porangui addressed, but I really like that. Breathing in with the nose and then squirting out with the mouth. It's a short bit because you can only have so much water in your mouth, but something to consider too for those that are trying it out.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Simon.
Just wanted to add a little piece, something that helped me when I was learning to circular breathe or spiral breathe. And that's just with the sniff. And actually, Eric, what you just spoke to is kind of relevant here because I feel like at the beginning, we're not going to have the strength in our cheeks, particularly to get that real control. I love that sound. But if you can just shorten the sniff, I feel that helps a lot at the beginning because you really don't actually need to put that much air in at a time. you could just be sniffing maybe a little bit more regularly and still having enough air, you know, in total. And I find if you have a shorter sniff, it's just almost like that Kapal Brady breath of fire. I found, and obviously not that many in a row, just like that really helps, gives you a little bit more time to inhale, but also not needing so much time to hold the air in your cheeks, because that can take some time. And you see the Indigenous players here, they have big cheeks, often hidden under a big curly beard as well, but they have that strength in their cheeks, which may take a little bit of time. So shortening the sniff can help, I feel, with that. Just so you don't have to hold as much in your cheeks. Yeah. And also, I think the more you play, and I found this, you can actually get to a point where you inhale too much. And now you actually, I sometimes feel like I need to release a bit of air through my nose, which is a whole nother thing, which you don't need to think about. But just being mindful that you only need a small, it's just a sip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I thought that might help. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, no, that's great. That's actually where the straw really is handy, you know, doing the technique with the straw, because the straw requires just a little bit, right? You just need little sniffs, and that's it. And so just practice. Everyone really try that technique with the straw. Remember, bubbles don't ever want to stop. That's what you got to focus on. Keep the bubbles going. And as you do that, and just use those cheeks, that little bellows, they don't require big cheeks, right? Because again, if you had big cheeks, that amount of pressure would just blow the water everywhere. And so the straw really forces you to get into that, oh, I can just do little sniffs. So thank you, Simon. That's a great point. And I think you brought up a really good thing. This is kind of more for advanced, you know, a slightly more advanced thing, but you guys may run into this. It's worth noting, is that when you take little sniffs, what'll happen is that you actually, as opposed to the rose, like deep sniff, where you send the air down into the bottom of the tank or into the bottom of your diaphragm, what happens is after a little while, if the oxygen has been sitting there for a while, it actually goes stale. The oxygen within us can actually, we use up the actual oxygen. And so what's left there, right, what would be our exhale is actually not generative, and it can actually start, we can feel like we're suffocating, even though we're kind of full of breath. It's kind of like when you hold your breath so long, you know, and then suddenly you just feel like, oh, I got to take that breath. We still have breath in there, but we've actually pulled the oxygen from the breath. You know, our body's done its thing. And so what happens is that sometimes if you're not taking deep sniffs and getting accustomed to like taking deep sniffs, you actually will like have to like exhale, like you said, like you have too much breath, or like that breath actually is not vital anymore. And so that's part of one of the things that one of my teachers taught me, is that when you're sniffing, get comfortable with, even if they're little sniffs, try to really shoot the sniff, if you know what I mean, down. Like really let it be your diaphragm that's actually pushing or pulling out. It's like pulling that breath all the way down so you get fresh air into the bottom of the tank, if that makes sense. So just as something like visually to kind of conceptually think about. So when you do that pranayama, when you do that, you're working with that breath of fire. That's what we're doing, is we're really activating the prana pump. You know, you're really getting that breath down to the bottom, and so it's like this, like you're shooting it down. Imagine a pool of water. It's like you're sending that fresh water all the way to the bottom. Cool. And yeah, and if you do feel like you have too much, the nose is your release valve. That's the one exemption to the rule of always the breath coming out of the mouth. Technically, breath is still coming out of your mouth, but this is the cool thing about this, is that when you develop this technique of using the mechanical musculature in the jaw to push air out, instead of it happening from all the soft tissue and the muscles and the diaphragm from your lungs, your normal air passage, is that it literally creates an independence. You're creating a layered independence so that you can actually move air through the mechanics of your mouth, independent from the actual inhale and exhale of your nose. So, and it actually is two-way. It's not just in. You can actually also use it to send air out, and that's what Simon's talking about. And that can really help sometimes when you do have too much, when you're at the top of your tank and you're taking little sniffs, you might stay up there. That's why I was saying, I like to personally, I play Didge, I probably hang out more in like the 50 to 60% range. I don't let my air tank, if you will, get down to the 30 ever, like that low, and I also don't want it too full. There's like a sweet spot where I like to be, and that'll come with time, so don't worry too much about that, but just to speak to that here as a technique, as approach. Really great points, guys. Any other questions before I move on? All right, beleza. So let's apply this now. Once you, let's say now you've spent time working with the straw, working with the sniff, you've done it without the straw, just with your mouth, okay? That's a really nice way to then get on the didge, because the didge is going to require more pressure than the straw. Then you're going to basically start with the actual instrument. And so with the instrument, you're going to want to start by just making a tone. You want to find where your lips want to be vibrating with the instrument, okay? So just make a sound, just like an exhale alone. So if you have an instrument with you right now, go ahead and get it ready. Sit up straight. And you want to really feel, your instrument. Make sure your diaphragm is really relaxed. Your belly's relaxed. It's probably, I don't recommend like doing this on a full stomach. Don't have a bunch of food. Like just, that's really uncomfortable. Let's see. Hold on a second. This is my dad's mic stand, and it's kind of falling around. Hold on. There we go. All right. And so when you play this, there's a couple techniques of how you're going to play the note. I learned playing half mouth on. There's didge players that say, and I've actually later I've gone back to like unlearn this habit of playing side mouth to play straight on, meaning my lips are sitting on the actual instrument. I'm gonna try to show you guys here by positioning it here and see if I can come up closer. So this is half versus full. So full is with my whole mouth in the hole. Half is with my mouth halfway off. I learned half technique. That's kind of just teaching myself, Later on, if in more advanced techniques like the tooting I was talking about, you actually want to cultivate playing full on with your whole mouth, lips totally inside the didge. If you're just learning and starting out, like I wish I had someone to coach me like I'm doing for you guys, I would recommend you guys start to learn and get into a good habit now of playing straight on with the instrument. Because what that's going to do is as you get more comfortable with that, you're going to be able to then get into more advanced techniques later on, like the toots I was talking about, also certain harmonics like tongue flicking. There's other things that you're able to do when you play full on. But do what's comfortable. I also recommend, because sometimes maybe your didge, like I think I had to learn the half technique partially because the shape of the mouthpiece that I had that I was playing with, because it depends on the size of your mouth and the size also of the embouchure of the actual hole, right? Your embouchure of your lips and the way that that fits into the aperture of the hole. So if you have about 1.5 inches is a pretty common didge diameter. But some didges, because of the nature of the wood or the mouthpiece, it's really big, and so your whole mouth might fit into it a little bit differently. That's easier for mouth straight on. Sometimes the hole is really small, in which case I might do that, move over to the half. So this is where you get to kind of see how your lips kind of like fit your instrument. So learn both. Here's the half one. I'll show you the technique. So I'm basically using the edge of the instrument is splitting my lips right down the middle, like this, okay? So I'm placing it right here. And then when I kick start it on, it's like there's like a puh sound with like, let me do this down here so you can see my lips. So I'm literally like kickstarting a motorcycle, right? And you want to kind of give it that in the beginning to like kickstart it. And once the vibration's going, the vibration will continue as long as you give it air, right? And keep air moving through, but it's like that initial explosion. Okay, that's on the side. And let me, I'm going to do this. I have a mic on the ground here so you can hear the didge a little better. Okay, so that's half, and then full on. So why don't you all just try that right now, just on your instruments. See if you can just make a tone, just a solid tone. And try with full breath, diaphragmatic breath, push the air out from your diaphragm and make one long note. And see how long of a note you can actually make. Everyone try that. Good. Nice long note. Nice long note. And try doing, try half mouth technique and try full mouth technique and see if one is, easier, harder. Just kind of see what works for your mouth. I'm kind of curious. For those of you who don't have an instrument, a didge, practice the one we were doing without a didge. Okay? For those who don't have an instrument, go ahead and try the just practice that. If you don't have an instrument, if you have a didge, make the tone into the didge. Can you hear me, Ash, over there? Am I coming through? Okay, good. So once you've made just long tones, now we're going to try the second part, okay? We're going to try to take that sniff before you run out. So when you get to about, just try even as high as 70%, okay? 100% full breath as you're blowing, you're playing. Once you get to about 70, 80, take that little sniff like Simon was talking about. Take a little sniff and switch to your cheeks, okay? Let's try that. Yeah, and kind of with this, each person kind of go to where your level's at. And this is where it's kind of tricky because we're all in different places and different levels of experience with this. So I would say go to where your level, where your edge is, and try to push into that edge just a little bit, okay? And I'm going to try to give some advanced things so that everyone can get something here, okay? Yeah, and it's okay to take time. If you're at a certain point where you just need to make the sound itself, then let's start there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 5 minutes right now for everyone just to go through wherever your edge of comfort is and play at that level. And then I'm going to have anyone has any questions for any refinement, and I'll help you at whatever level you're at. Cool? So again, let's just take 5 minutes right now. I'm going to kind of go through and teach a couple more things, and then, that are more advanced, and then kind of we'll come back with the whole group, if that makes sense. So for those who are playing a little more advanced style, like Simon, for instance, okay, we're going to go ahead and as you play here, full mouth on, make that circular breath and try getting into a rhythm with it. Start to make a rhythm. Okay, we're going to connect it and then have your pulse, your different pattern. So for instance, so just a nice pulsing beat. See if you can create that. And raise your hands. Who's got that right now? Who's got that level? Okay, raise your hand. Okay, 3 of you got that. Good. Beleza. Good. So that pulsing beat. Who's challenged by that? Who's challenged by that? Who's like close but like? Austin, how about you? Just making the sound? Are you still at the level just making the sound?
Yeah, I still just working with the breathing, the circular breathing.
Okay, just getting the circular breathing. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. What's that? Okay, good. I'm going to go through, let's see. Let's try this. I'm going to do the pulse. You just heard the pulse. Let's have each person, let me hear where you're at with it. Let me hear the pulse. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let me do this. Yeah, Ashley had a good idea. I'm just going to demonstrate for you guys the different layers. Cool? Let's start there. Yeah. It's like tricky, right? Because we all have different levels and different instruments, and some of us don't have instruments at all. So I'm trying to meet everyone's need. It's a little tricky. So thanks for the patience. So let me demonstrate. So the first level, just the note, right? Which I was showing you. So you're taking everything we just talked about pre the instrument, applying it to the instrument. Lips relaxed, kick start it, and I make one tone, okay? Where I take the sniff is then I can use that sniff, that seam of the spiral, right? When we come back around, I'm using that sniff to then create a rhythm. All right, that's the first layer, if you will, of the rhythm. You know, the first layer of that, of what we were talking about, all those layers. That's the first layer where I start to really create a pulse, because you can just make a drone otherwise, where it's seamless, right? It just becomes a drone. It's just kind of going infinitely. But once you want to start to make it rhythmic and it becomes a rhythmic instrument, you're using that seam as the first base level of your percussion. So it sounds like this. So I'm now using my diaphragm to bounce. That was the next technique there, okay? That's what we call the diaphragm bounce. So what that is, I'm actually using my diaphragm and the back pressure to create a pulsing. You can push against it. It's almost like a trampoline. And if you get into the right rhythm with it, you literally can create this pulsing, and it creates this like a vibrato. It's like a real strong vibrato, but I'm using the back pressure, like pushes back. The instrument, like as I blow in, it pushes back, and it creates this pressure that I can play off of. And I can bounce it in my diaphragm, because my diaphragm is like, our diaphragm is like a spring, right? It's like this big spring. Excuse my mic stand, it keeps wanting to follow.
Will you do that again?
Yeah. So the slow one, I'm using the full diaphragm, the full pulse, right? You guys heard like just nice 4 on the floor, like a pulse, where I'm breathing. Every time I take my sniff, I'm doing that in a certain rhythm, right? That tempo, by the way, is determined by you. In so much as you're learning, find where your rhythm is for your instrument, i.e., your body, your lung capacity is going to be different from the next person. So I invite you all to find where it is that you feel you naturally want to take a breath. That's going to determine how fast or how slow you play. Does that make sense? Does everyone kind of feel what I'm saying here? So like, for instance, if you have a small lungs, you're probably going to breathe a little faster. You know, you're going to want to take that breath faster. And so your rhythm, the cadence of it, might be faster. And that's okay. And if you have more lung capacity, and this might change as you do this, you might actually find that your lungs, they're going to expand and get stronger. And so it's like an exercise, right? And so you're going to get more comfortable. Then you can make it slower. And so in the beginning, I'm saying is just practice just by finding what your natural cadence is, where that rhythm wants to be. And as you get better, more proficient, at some point, for those of you who are a little more advanced, I even use a metronome, or might use like a groove or a recording, you know, maybe like some dance track that I like, and then I play with that, something with a consistent time, and then I'll play along to that to cultivate my ability to time and play breathing in time, because you're basically breathing in tempo. Does that make sense? And that's so like I played a clave pattern for you guys, right? The ba, 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 right? That's a pattern. Right, that's actually we were playing this in the retreat, right? That's the 3-5, right? 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5. So going back to our rhythm blocks, which we've done. We've done it here on the live stream learners. For those of you guys who are new to this, it's in the replays. It's in some of the earlier videos. Definitely go back and check those out. But this is a 3-5 rhythm block. I'm doing 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5, and I'm doing it with my breath. So it sounds like this. So you can slow it down depending on where you're feeling, right? Whatever feels comfortable. Always start slow. Speed always comes with time as you repeat it. So that's the 3-5, just kind of connecting all the different lessons together. So just giving you some more context, yeah? So 3-5. And then I showed you the bounce. So the bounce is I'm relaxing into the back pressure, finding the sweet spot, kind of like I was talking about to you. And then I'm letting my belly, kind of like I'm laughing. Ha 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 ha. I'm letting that bounce, right? Like a Santa Claus, you know, ho, 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 ho. I'm just like letting that vibrato, right, happen. And the didge is then moving with me. So it goes like this. And then I take a big breath in. Because when I'm doing that vibrato, I'm not actually breathing. I'm just bouncing. I'm like literally using, it's like vibrato. It's just, that's all it is. I'm letting my diaphragm go in and out, like I'm kind of laughing, if you will. But it's all an exhale thing, right? It's all exhale. And then I'm going to breathe in. So I'm going to add now the layer. It's 2 layers now. The vibrato breath, right? The bouncing with an in breath, okay? To create a simple rhythm. Here we go. We'll just do a nice straight ahead 4/4 thing. So there's an example, just a simple one, right? Ba kiki kiki taka tiki tiki taka. Okay, with the 5. Go ahead. Yeah, they can still do that, exactly. People who don't have circular breathing yet, you can do this with just one exhale. Just try the bounce if you want to get the bounce. Okay? So just try the bounce. Good. Now I'm going to give you one more on that layer, right? So I'm going to go through the layers of complexity. I'm going to demonstrate, jump on wherever you can get it, and then I'll come back and we can kind of like dial in any questions. Cool? So again, the bounce, you heard the bounce. I'm taking those breaths in. Now I'm going to add the next layer, okay, is I'm going to use my tongue and the shape of my mouth to create and play with the harmonics. The harmonics are always there. It's just like our voice when we worked on toning and like the seed sounds. If you guys remember that, like the E to the of the seed sounds, we're shaping like ear, ear. We're playing with that ear sound, that weird sound. Excuse me. So that we can bring out those harmonics, but we're doing it now inside the didge. And what's cool about that is that the didge then, as we do that ear, right, shape of our mouth, I'm not actually saying that at this point. That's another layer. But this layer, I'm playing the fundamentals, so the didge is creating all this rich tonality. All those harmonics are there. But now I'm using the shape of my mouth as I go from E to to actually like focus into those harmonics, just like we do when we're throat singing or overtone singing. But now the didge is doing the singing for me, and I'm using my mouth to shape it and create those other harmonics. It's really cool. So it sounds like this. So I'm going wee. It's kind of like that. Like I'm going wee. I can't quite do wee. The is hard. You can do it. I can almost get the but you have to be careful to not have the lips fizzle out. Because if your lips drop, then you lose your sound. You know what I mean? So you kind of like, you're playing within the boundaries of what the instrument lets you do. But again, push those boundaries, because as you do it more, it's amazing. Like this instrument, things will open up that you didn't even realize you could do. So I say that all with the rule of thumb here. So here it is. I'm going to go from E to the towards the That's all an exhale, by the way. So you guys who don't have circular breathing yet, you can still do this. So it's just, I'm just blowing, making the sound. You kickstart the sound. Right? You have the sound going. Now with your tongue, go weir, weir, weir. Try to move your tongue around. When my finger comes back towards my face, I'm in the E, and when it goes forward, I'm in the going towards the Weir, 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 weir. And now I'm adding just breaths in between every so often so I can keep doing it. But I'll show you the breath with my hand so you can kind of know what I'm doing by going up. So this always represents the axis of the breath. This is full breath, 100% tank. This is empty down here. And this represents, the finger here represents when I'm going from the E to the Okay, so this is the tongue shape. So tongue shape, breath. I'm going to see if I can do this for you to kind of like illustrate what's happening. See, I can then add the layer of then the pulsing. So you have the tongue, you have the breath where you're taking your breath, and you have the pulsing, that vibrato, if you want to create subdivisions. So I use this to create like really complex rhythmic things that would, by itself, you can't, it's like it's the combination. You're creating the polyrhythm. So in a way, you can think of it like a drum kit player, okay? The drum kit player, the breath is my kick drum, okay? And the pulsing is like my hi-hat, right? So you have the with my foot, and then I had the right? And then I can play this is like all the detail and say the snare or something like that. It's like I'm playing a filter. But basically you have these different parts now that you're able to create together into a little orchestra. So I'll demonstrate again here some variations to inspire. So there I ended with a roll of the tongue. So anybody here knows what I mean by that? So you like, can everyone do the, like kind of like a cat a little bit? Like ruffles have ridges, R español. So this R, if you can work on it, and some of us don't have it because we didn't say these words when we were growing up. Work on it though. You add that here. That's how you get the roll. Raise your hand by a raising of hands. Who has the R? Just curious. Like who's just like. Yeah, with or without the didge. Do you have the R? Yeah. Okay. Who doesn't? So Simon, no R's. Okay, no R's in Australia. That's right. All right. Ashley struggles with her R's a little bit. All right, that's okay. So if you don't have the R, the other alternate technique is using the tka tka tka. It's like a t and a k, and so the t k t k t k. So it's T and a K sound, and you go back and forth tka 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 tka, and you can create kind of what approximates the R by getting fast with it. So they get really, so you go, and so you can get that to kind of create what I get with an R, with the rolling R. If you have both, which if those of you who already have the R, you can actually, then you can combine those into some cool, rhythms together. But practice that. So t, k, t, k, t, k. can do this with no circular breathing. If you don't have this circular breathing down, this is another technique you can already start practicing. And if you don't have a didge, like for you, Chris, just practice breathe and add that breath in there. Breathe in through your nose. So it's sniff. Okay, try that. Sounds like this if you have a didge. Just nice and slow. You can slow it down. Of course, it's, you know, it gets more technical, but it's good just to practice those slow things too. Good. Next one, I'm going to give you a number of these, just to, like, things that you could play with and start to practice with, okay? The next layer, all right? So you have the percussive tongue, right? You have the bending, the E to the right? Kind of bending of the harmonics, kind of like tonal, when we sing overtone singing or harmonic singing. So you're focusing those harmonics with the shape of your mouth. And then we have vocalizing. And so we're just going to use our voice and sing a note. And we can just give a little yelp, like a little woo, woo, into the didge. Okay, sounds like this. So it's layered with the right? Your lips are doing that thing as you go, but you're gonna go. You're gonna layer it with a little chirp, a little, just vocalize and make it easy. It could just be it could be low, it could be high. It's whatever you want. Just play with it. Just make it sound, activate your vocal cords into the didge. Try a climb. If you don't have an instrument, just go and try going down. Just get comfortable. The point here is get comfortable to vocalize so that you can just add that layer at any moment. Because your vocal cords are just hanging out, right? We haven't even used them yet. We're making all this music with just our lips and the shape of our mouth, with the way our breath and how we're breathing, the cadence of our breath. But now you've got this amazing thing, these vocal cords that can do all kinds of cool stuff. And now we're layering that now on top of it. And so now you have a whole orchestra in your mouth. It's pretty cool. So try that. Try just the chirps. When I hear Aboriginal players, often they'll make different sounds that emulate animals, you know, and that connects back to that creation story that we were talking about at the beginning, right? It's like in the beginning, when there was nothing, in the darkness, right? The first sound, that primordial sound, the Om, right? The beginning of everything gets played out of a didge, and all the animals were played. So I invite you to visualize, to connect to the frequency, the sonic signature of different animals that you relate to, that are maybe your guides, maybe you have a connection or an affinity to, and I just invite you to start to play with those sounds, you know, and see what they sound like. You know, make those sounds with your mouth as you play the didge, as your lips are vibrating. So just try that. Everyone just kind of experiment with that a little bit. Just take a second. Beleza? And you can see the infinite possibility here. This is where you get to be a storyteller through sound. So invoke the storyteller, right? You're telling a story. You're telling the story of creation as you play this instrument. And so I just invite you to kind of, bring that into your playfulness, and allow your inner child, it's like we get so serious sometimes, it's like play. Bring that little girl, that little boy, man. Let him just like, be goofy. Have fun with it. This instrument is inviting us to be fun. I mean, it's crazy, right? We're vibrating our lips in a big tube. It's hilarious, right? This is the epitome of classical music right now. You understand? I've actually played the didge in a Pangean orchestra, and they actually had me play the didge, and I was with all these really classically trained musicians, and I was like, "How cool is this? I get to blow through this tube. It's like awesome, and be up here in the symphony hall. It's amazing. So be playful, yeah, and it's medicine for us. So in this one again, do this whether you have the circular breathing down or not. I invite you guys just to like spend time just making sounds with the didge, just making cool sounds. Beleza? So, next layer, right? We talked a little bit about, and this is going to be the vocalizing is to find the note of your didge. So I'm going to invite you. I'm assuming you all have some sense of, some singing abilities, or you probably wouldn't be here. But lean into your singing, and you want to try to sing. I want you to sing the fundamental note of your didge. So this didge is in D, so I'm going to sing or re. I'm going to sing that note with the didge, and kind of I can slide into it. Sometimes that's a nice way. It's like slide down like we were doing that, ew, and like sit into it, and so you hear it. And when you do hit the fundamental, you'll hear something will happen, like a new note will emerge, because those two notes, your voice and the didge itself, come in and out of phase, and you can actually play with that by slowly varying your pitch, a little sharp, a little flat of the fundamental, and you can create pulsing. It's a really cool thing, and honestly, it's something I think I hear more in my head than probably other people hear, but it sounds so cool and it's very healing. So it's kind of like the binaural beats within you. So just give it a shot. It sounds like this. So I'm going ooh, doo 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 doo, ooh doo, and as I slow it down, ooh, it's gonna like slide into the notes. You can hear it kind of like go into phase and then out of phase. I don't know if it's translating totally on the mic, but that's what I'm hearing in my head. Do you guys hear that? Can you kind of hear it a little bit? Cool. So play with that. Try that once more. I'll do it once more. I'll demonstrate once more, and then everyone take a minute to play. Cool. Now everyone, you guys try it. So just kind of sing into your didge, play the fundamental note, just the main note, and before you run out of a breath, just try singing that note, try singing a couple notes around it, make a simple scale, and slide in and out of the note. For those of us who don't have a didge right now, how's the circular breathing going? With the straw or without the straw?
Well, I'm gonna have to practice a bunch more, but I'm definitely having fun already with what I can do with just the extra possibilities with the RC202. Like,
Awesome, Chris.
there's a lot of fun to be had. That's what I've been doing, playing with my kids.
Beleza. Beautiful. And you can always come back, and do the replay with this, obviously, once you have your instrument. Yeah, cool.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's 4 diaphragms in the body, and I'm not clear always which one you're talking about. So there's the one in the back of the throat that I have a sense is really what is coming online in a new way. So when you're talking about chewing the air, I'm imagining that the back of the throat diaphragm is also coming into play. Is that correct?
Ah, interesting. I mean, it probably is, but when you're chewing the air, it's more just the mechanics of to help the bellows to push the air out, like
It
without you having to use as much energy.
throat
Because
then.
if you do only cheeks, sometimes you're and this will happen. Your cheeks might get a little sore, kind of like when you chew bubble gum or you blow up a balloon. After you like, let's say you're filling up balloons for a birthday party. Have you ever noticed your cheeks are like kind of sore, a little achy? That's because you're like working these muscles that we don't necessarily work that way. So you're starting to work these muscles in a new way. So they will be a little sore. That's real common.
That's in the jaw,
So
though.
especially the jaw, but the jaw we chew food all the time. So that's
Sure.
why when you close your jaw, kind of like your teeth, like kind of biting down, you're actually then reducing the volume of air in your mouth. So if I do that with my lips closed, it just it makes it easier to actually push that air out without me have to like think about squeezing my cheeks, if that makes sense. Without me going, I can do that too, but I can just go, just close my mouth. And when you're doing the didge, that's kind of like those little sniffs. We take a little sniff and close your mouth, and you kind of do most of the work. So it's like, again, I've talked about this before, but like technique is being able to get efficient, right, and get the most sound with the least amount of effort. And so the same applies here. So that's like what Simon was talking about, like the little sniffs. Practice just closing your mouth and taking the little sniff together. So if we're doing that without a didge, in your case, right? It's a little, I'm just taking little sniffs, right? Just moving quickly, and I'm using that jaw. But it's easier with the didge. Good. I don't know about that diaphragm though. So to get back to your question of all the diaphragms, I know
There's
that, yeah,
the intercostal that holds up all there, and then the pelvic diaphragm. So when you're talking about diaphragm, I just want to know which one you're talking about. There's
yeah.
also
So
cerebrospinal, but I doubt that one's implicated in a way that we.
I bet it's being activated by this again.
Yeah,
Like
it's
this,
being activated as well.
I bet it is. I bet all the diaphragms are being activated. My perineum is being activated, the very bottom of my pelvic floor. But I would say the main one, especially when I really play the didge for extended times, and I recommend this, guys, like this instrument, like I really developed my relationship when I would go out into nature and I would just take this instrument like out into the desert. I would climb a mountain with this thing and just hike up a mountaintop. And then I would sit there all night and just play for hours, just with all the animals and just like animals playing back to me. And that's when I really started to understand it. It's like, it's when you sit with it and play continuously for more than an hour, that's when like you go into other realms with no psychedelic drug, like just your breath. I mean, it's the ultimate breath teacher. You will open portals you did not know existed. And so I'm telling you, like, and those diaphragms will open, in other ways that you didn't know was possible. It's really profound that way. And I mean, that's part of why I think the Aboriginal people worked with it in that way, in those ceremonial ways. It literally opens and unlocks. It's a different type of breath work because you really are working at this, right? It's like, even when we do a breath work, a facilitated breath work, you're still like very much like you're inhale, exhaling. You're following a pattern that we've done our whole lives. When you're doing it in the spiral way, something else happens. The continuous vibration and resonance happening continuously for extended time, it opens up other things. Things vibrate out. Traumas start to release. Things that you didn't know were there. And especially when you start getting into different rhythms and playing with that rhythm, like I was talking about, the cadence of your breath, of your diaphragm, where does it like to live? And just play with that and let that just be your guiding force. Yeah, good question. Any other questions before I show you one more? We'll show you the toot. No? Okay. Tooting on. Here we go. So the toot, the toot, and this is a little more advanced. So this is going to get into the different embouchures, right? So we talked about the embouchure that is, just relaxed lips. and you're gonna keep your lips. Again, it's kind of like two rubber bands. You know, if you guys ever seen rubber bands, if you pull the rubber bands taut, right, a rubber band at the edges, and you flick it, right, it's gonna flick and it's gonna vibrate. If they're loose, if it's not very loose, you flick it, it's just gonna flap there. But if you pull it tighter, the tighter you pull it and you flick it, a little, the same flick, the same amount of energy of the flick will cause it to vibrate longer, right? And there's kind of a sweet spot there. And so we're playing with that tautness by making like a very subtle, gentle smile. So play with that as you vibrate your lips right now. Try smiling subtly and then relaxing it, and just see if you can control the rate at which your lips are vibrating. And you start to control that air pressure. Just keep the air pressure equal, and just play with just tightening and loosening the edges of your lips. Yeah, nice. Yeah, good. Nice, Leah. You got this. And it's really fun when you try to laugh when you do it. So as we get this, what we're doing with the toot is we're gonna tighten the lips pretty tight, and we're gonna go into almost like you're trying to make it the elephant. Does anyone know how to do the elephant? Elephants like this. You've got to have the trunk of the elephant, you know. So you tightening. I'm tightening my lips real tight. You know, I'm using kind of filling up the air inside of my lips. But for the toot, you don't need to do that. But it's that same idea, really tight. It's that momentary little blast of air, like a trumpet player. You're kind of going into that embouchure of a trumpet player. So if anyone's ever played trombone or trumpet, this would probably be easier for you. So it looks like this on the didge. So I have the fundamental, I have the first kind of toot, if you will, first harmonic, and then I have another harmonic that I'm able to do right now. And you have to do this, by the way, this is the technique, not the side technique, but the front technique, okay? So I'm like, you know, you have grass in your mouth or something, you're like, oh, and spitting it out. It's kind of like that. So it's tight lips, not loose lips. And you're going to find it for your instrument. Each didge, because of the physics of each didge is unique, those toots are going to be at different places. Okay, so you kind of have to find it. And once you find it, you can always go back to it. It's like you kind of rely on it, almost like a ring of a ladder. You're going to come back to that ladder. And as you start to cultivate your ability to jump through it does tickle. That's normal. As you go through them, though, you'll be able to actually then access these other notes. And then you start to cultivate how to play them in a rhythm, say, and involve them in your playing style. I'll just show you some different examples. So I can actually put it into my rhythm with my didge. So you have to, it's a little hard. That's where my edge, I'm still learning how to do this well. But like you change through the gears. You kind of have to change like the clutch of your car, but you do it quickly. And as you cultivate it, it gets easier and easier so that you can quickly go from a regular playing the fundamental, loose lips, and then slip into the toot. And like it's good to start with just the first one, and then if you can you start to get in the higher ones, and then build those into, say, like a very percussive pattern. And this is really very percussive didge playing. This is not what you do, obviously, if you're doing a more of a sound healing vibe, you know, more of an ambient vibe. This is something you do when you're really, you almost beatboxing into the didge kind of a thing, right? So just to say, and this is advanced, it might feel really weird, but you're getting that pattern and learning to jump between them. And circular breathe. Now I could even circular breathe at the toot level, but it's a lot of pressure. But this is what it would look like. So I can actually circular breathe there, but it takes a lot of pressure, and so it's gonna be, yeah. But the key is, as you get to that level, starting to just practice being full mouth in, and just see if you can get an occasional toot. For right now, just try getting one. Play the fundamental and then play the toot twice. You kind of like play with that and going back and forth, so you get comfortable going in and out of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a clarifying question so the whole group can hear me. We have to mute one of us when I talk. So just to clarify, the way you're switching, you go from the loose lips for the normal playing to the tight lip with little air bursts to get the toot. And then what's the difference between like getting another octave? Like what are you doing differently to find the next octave?
So I'm going to tighten the lips even tighter. So I'm pulling, remember the rubber band here? I'm pulling it back. So I'm going from the so I'm actually playing those notes. It's really about the embouchure. It's all in your lips. The amount of air pressure goes up slightly more. It's like a burst of air, but it's really about how tight your lips are and getting that embouchure tight. Again, it's like horn technique. It's more like getting into like the way a trumpet player plays. Certain horns didn't even have the buttons, right? They would do that all just using like what I'm doing right now, this tooting, this tightening of the embouchure as they push the air through it. Like when I play a conch shell, that's how we're doing it. If I want to play different notes, I have to tighten that embouchure. There on a conch, it's hard because it's a small little hole. So you really have to get your lips on it and very tight and tighten it up right at the tips of your lips. Now, I'm not a horn player, but there's guys, horn players, they know they can play with that space and really cultivate. I mean, it's a technique and like a lifelong, you cultivating the strength in your lips and creating that control, refined control to be able to hit those other notes. But you're doing that here. You can start to do that here with the Didge, which is great. So again, like I said, this is where I'm still developing my skills. Like that's my edge, and that's how this instrument is. You'll keep hitting that next like thing. What's the next thing I'm cultivating and developing? And you can go back to just the breathing, and just stay there. I mean, it's so deep right there, and it's like as you go through each layer, there's layers of complexity, and then you bring them all together. Right? And then it's like we're layering everything together. The vocalizing, the breathing, the harmonics, changing the shape of our mouth, right? Using the diaphragm to vibrate and to bounce, right? That layer, adding the layer of the vocalizing, right? And then adding the layer of the toots. And now all of those together combined, you have this really complex instrument suddenly that just came out of a tube. So that's really the goal. I'm leaving you guys with is like you get to really engage this at all these different levels, and the idea is to bring you into a wholeness with it, so that it's just like this is just an extension, amplification of your instrument. Questions?
So I just want to clarify. So since we're way over time, but we started late, but you want to leave a few minutes and let people ask questions about what we just went over and kind of where each person's at. Yeah, cool. And if anybody has to hop off, all good.
Go ahead. Anybody, any questions, anything that's clarifications?
Leah, is that a little hand raised thing? You can go ahead.
It is. So how do you know that the sound you're getting from this is the drone? Like I'm not hearing like the wing, or I'm hearing sometimes it kind of gel into what sounds like a note, but I'm not exactly sure if that's the actual note. So how do you know, I guess? Oh, you're on mute.
If you found the fundamental of the didge itself, like the main note.
Yeah.
So just why don't you play for us?
Oh, okay. I hope you can hear it. That's where I can't tell. Like, it's like,
Oh, well, don't do. I wouldn't do your. Don't vocalize into it. Just play. Just get the fundamental notes. So just
yeah,
kick start with your lips. Yeah.
right. I'm just blowing. I'm not actually. I found it kind of easier to get that note out if with the whole mouth, but I can try this side.
No, you can do the whole mouth. That's fine. So go. I can already tell Leah. You want looser lips. So you're doing really tight lips.
Okay.
Yeah. For the fundamental, it's really loose. It's like motorboat.
Okay. Fundamental.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the higher ones, that's gonna get into like the toots we were just talking about. You don't want to, not for the beginning. When you're just starting out, just want to work on that fundamental.
Okay. So should I try again or?
Yeah, you can do one more time and then we'll
one
move
more
on.
time.
It's something we're all gonna have to practice.
I know. I don't. Okay.
You're good.
So that's looser, but it's deeper, but I still can't tell.
I can't tell totally if it's the microphone or the position, but all I heard was I think you vocalizing into the didge. It should just.
So. Okay. All right. I'll keep trying to just blow it.
Yeah. You'll get it again. And the thing is just really let your lips be relaxed and kickstart them, and you'll hear the didge kind of just picks up on its own and will start to go. And yeah, turn on original sound. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, if you go to your settings there in the upper left corner, make sure it says original sound on.
Oh, okay.
There, now we hear you. Yeah, go.
I didn't see it before. Okay.
And also just to name that what he said, like the kick starting for me, just finding the note on the didge is like all as far as I've gotten. And it's really like having that burst of pressure, like, and finding the sweet spot where it activates the fundamental note.
That's right.
It's strange to start with the cheeks full. I don't know if anyone finds that.
Let's get your lips loose. Yeah. Yeah, let your lips vibrate. Where's the motorboat? Like, make a motorboat.
I can do without my cheeks full, but not with my.
Yeah, don't do it with your. Don't worry about your cheeks full for now. Just do it in the didge. Don't worry about the cheeks for now. Okay. Just make the sound.
All right.
Nice.
That was the motorboat.
That's nice. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
That's the didge.
I think I get it.
Good job. Yeah, and then
Thanks.
the cheeks will come. The cheeks come because the didge will push against those lips, and then it's easier to then fill your cheeks up. Yeah, it's kind of like it kind of puts pressure in. They can just
yeah, that
fill
felt
up
way
naturally.
different.
Yeah,
okay.
excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Questions, clarification? Go ahead, Casey.
I was able to get it with the straw. That was the first time I was able to get it, so that was cool. But I was curious, with the didge, is it just more air that's going? That like, because I tried doing it in the didge, then I wasn't able to sustain. Is it just more air needed then, pretty much?
Yeah, in the didge, yeah, it is more air for
Okay.
sure. So if you get it in the straw, yeah, and so again, that's why I was like showing you kind of the example with no straw.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit more air pressure. It definitely does. The didge is much bigger than a straw, so that we were talking about like what's pushing back. So there, you really gotta really just give it more gas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody else have any tips of how they translate over to the didge? Simon, I don't know. Do you have anyone that's helped you? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've already explained it in a few ways, and there's so many ways to sort of visualize it. But I think someone mentioned earlier before about the diaphragms and having those separate diaphragms. So you sort of have to think of it as though, okay, so the air's coming up from the belly, from the diaphragm through the lungs, and you can just play that. That's just one note. that's even just a good place to start. Do that for 10 minutes every day and your life will change. But if you want to then start doing the circular breath, the spiral breath, you've got to think of the cheeks or the air that's in your cheeks, in your mouth, sort of as like a backup reservoir of air. And the whole purpose of this, or at least for the circular breath, is to hold enough air so that you can push that air out and give yourself enough time to sniff. So you're separating the air in the cheeks and the lungs. So just to play one note, it's just the lungs. But then to give yourself the opportunity to breathe in through the nose to refill the lungs, you've got this backup little bit of air in the cheeks, which will come through. And I think also you mentioned it, but just having the relaxed lips as well will help you to get into that lower tone. And it's not forceful either. I learned this with the bansuri as well, which I'm still learning to play. But you don't need to be going crazy. You can find that subtle balance where there's just enough air coming through, and you've got that space, with the air in the cheeks to breathe in. So maybe that helps too. Is just thinking of your cheeks and the air in the cheeks is separate to the air in your lungs, and the air in the cheeks is just that backup air which you'll push out when you need to take the sniff to refill the main reservoir, the lungs. Hopefully that helps. That helped me at least. But also just play it and it'll come.
Yeah. Same thing. And Casey, just try to make that fundamental note, kind of like we were telling Leah. Just get your lips going, and just get comfortable with just making a long note. That's just to make the fundamental note of the didge start to resonate. It's like once you kick it on, you kick that engine on, it really gets easier from there, and it doesn't take that much effort. For the fundamental, when I show you the toots are very advanced. That takes a lot of effort. So just, that's probably not going to apply to anybody here maybe but Simon, this more advanced stuff. But I wanted to give you guys all of that just to show you the range of what's possible with this instrument. It's really complex. But just hang out, make that fundamental, and get comfortable with it. Play that straw, just get the sequence of the muscles so it's just like second nature to you to keep the bubbles going. And then that way, all you're changing is just the amount of air. You're just making that fundamental, but then think the same muscle organization, the same sequence of muscles are going to happen when you're on the didge. It's the same as the straw. So just, I think you'll be there in no time. And again, in the network, feel free, guys, like kind of let us know your progress. If you get stuck anywhere, always feel free to pulse in there. Go ahead. Any more questions before we wrap here for today? I know we're way over, so I appreciate everyone's patience. I know this is a deep instrument, and there's a lot to it. Go ahead, Andrew.
There's one sound that I don't know how to make that's kind of a second or third layer sound. If you basically doing the drone thing, it comes through almost as like a woof type of a thing. Do you know what that might be and how you could do that?
A woof?
It's like almost like a Chewbacca sound, like a ra. It's
like a growl,
I don't know how to describe it.
Is that growl sound? Maybe it's the growl.
Yeah, it's kind of like a growl, but it's not like the whoop where it's high pitched. It's lower tone than that.
Like that?
I think it's different than that.
Okay. Well, you know what? If you have a recording of it, someone playing it, you can send it.
Yeah.
I'll have a listen and see if I. It's hard to without hearing it. So.
Yeah, hard to recreate that sound. Okay.
There's kind of a million sounds you can make with this thing. So
yeah. Right on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Any questions? Eric, Austin, didn't hear from you guys too much too. Love to hear from y'all.
I feel like when I try to sustain a note, eventually I get to a spot where I got to get into like a pattern of like my breathing, and my pattern reflects my need for air. I think one of the things that I need to work on is sustaining a note for, is it imaginable to do like 5 minutes, the same note, no breaks in there? Because I guess I'm not utilizing my cheek muscles. I don't know. I think that's the aim. I guess my question is, should I be able to sustain one note for a really long period of time?
Yeah. And that's a great question. I think if I'm hearing you right, it's like rhythmic playing versus just drone. And if you want to get the drone or the seamless drone, quote unquote, like getting it as seamless as possible, that is also a really powerful and helpful thing to do. And so with that, you are using your cheek still, but you're not being as explicit of where your sniff is. You're trying to make your sniff subtle. So you're taking like a slow, long and slow sniff. So you're trying to really get that seam to be invisible. And that is a very important thing to do. I think a really helpful thing to do. And so I recommend just practicing, because again, you kind of said it, your own breath capacity, your lungs are going to determine where that is for you, and also where you are in any given moment. If you're kind of, if you're not breathing, if you're not in this relaxed, dropped in meditative state, if you're coming into it, kind of like high strung a little bit, if you know what I mean, kind of winded. So here's an example, right? So I'm gonna try to make it so that you can't tell where I'm sniffing. I'm still sniffing because that's the only way we can keep going. But I'll try to indicate here with my finger, yeah? So So I'm slowing down that process of the sniff, right? I'm slowing it down so that it becomes really just part of the drone, and it's not so rhythmic. It's not so noticeable. And sometimes I'll use my tongue, like you heard that little sound. I'm doing that with my tongue, going inside. I can use other sounds sometimes to like cover it up. You know what I mean? To kind of like mask where that sniff is even happening. So you can kind of use the sounds, you're trying to really create that seamless thing where someone's like, wow, how is that? Like, I don't hear any breathing. How is that even happening? It's the original looper, in fact. It's the OG looper, which is what I love about this instrument too. Being a looping artist, aside from that, it's like, this is where it all started.
I think there's also an aspect, I'm not sure if this was part of what you're asking, Eric, but just about endurance. And if you have any tips on endurance other than just like practicing regularly.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, yes, practicing regularly is the only way you build up endurance on this instrument. The other way, though, if you want to go like cultivate like actual chops, as we call them in musicianship terms, to get chops on this instrument, is actually to play different ones, like play longer didges, bigger, didges that have more volumes of air. Like learning to be proficient on a lower didge will allow you to then get on a shorter didge, like a higher key. So like for instance, if you practice on a B didge, okay, one that's in the key of B, say, or B flat, that's a pretty long didge. Didges you don't see get lower than A, generally speaking. They just the physics of it don't really work. The shortest didges you see are usually up in the key of E. So you kind of have a range there from, it is an example. So let me give you, I didn't do this, so let me actually show you guys real quick on the slide didge so you can kind of hear what I mean. So the E and the higher didges are good for percussive playing, because you can get really percussive with them because the back pressure is such that it's easy to like do a lot of cool fast didge playing, and the longer ones are actually more for kind of the more ambient. They're like, it's harder to get really percussive with them because you're kind of, the sound will drop out easily. What's cool is that, and this is getting to the technique, that question Ashley just said, and one of the things I learned from one of my teachers is to, who made that didge, Rob, who I was telling you about, he said he would, to put it in water. And this doesn't work great if you have a didge that's like made of wood, say, unless it has a good like seal on it. But you can stick it in, but the PVC is great for this. Stick it in a bucket of water and play bubbles into that. And that literally will strengthen your diaphragm, because it's like training with weights on your ankles, and blow bubbles in like a giant straw playing the didge, and that will make you so strong. It's ridiculous. So then when you play with the regular didge, you've got like, diaphragm of steel. So let me show you though, in light of that. So here's a high didge. I'll play the low one, which this goes down to like a B. you see where this can go. You suddenly have this. We call it a didgebone, like a trombone and a didgeridoo. It's the didgebone, and so you can actually. I have fun with that. Sometimes playing, I can actually play melody lines like a bass line with the didge. Something that I haven't seen. Yeah, slide didge is a lot of fun. Definitely recommend getting one. This like PVC one. You can find PVC slides pretty cheap, online. And of course, some of the best didge makers that I know, there's a guy, Primal Tones. If you guys ever heard of him, Primal Tones, Tyler's his name. Dear friend, really beautiful brother, lives up in Oregon, and he made my slide didge that I perform with when I travel. I use a slide didge in my live performances because I can't, if I'm flying, I can't take, a bunch of didges, and that allows me to play with different songs, different keys, so that's something that's really nice about slides. And then you can do what I was just demonstrating, where you can actually play like bass lines using, the different keys as you play. Yeah, kind of depends on the slide. Some slides are a little sticky, or they don't like quite seal well, so you got to have a good one for that. But again, really flexible in that way, a lot of fun. So planting that. A couple of last things, also tips that just made me think of. I like agave didges personally. They're my favorite for a natural material didge, also because of the weight. So if you play over people, if you're doing more sound healing, if you're going to be moving through an audience, I highly recommend the agave didge. It's beautiful. Obviously, it comes from the desert where I live, so I feel really connected to these instruments and these plants. They're part of my life. But they're amazingly light. They're kind of like a balsa wood. If you play like a eucalyptus didge, which is amazing, that's like the OG, like or the hardwoods that Simon was showing, they're incredible, and the sound is actually brighter. Sometimes they cut better. You don't need a microphone. But the thing with them is if you try to move around, you're going to get tired quick because it's basically a giant log, right? Simon might be able to speak to that. But yeah, they get really tiring. So that's hard if you're moving around people, like if you're trying to play over someone's body. You don't want to suddenly get tired and then have the didge like fall on them or something. So you have to be careful, right? The PVC ones are cool in that you kind of get best of all worlds, in that way, but there's something you do lose in the PVC, the perfection of the tube. Like there's something about the inconsistencies, the inside being rough, that actually adds to the timbre of the instrument, that adds to the richness of the harmonics. And so I find that you don't want a perfect tube. And some people actually will take their PVC didge and like melt it a little bit and kind of create like divots and like, grooves in it. So those little bends and stuff, they actually will add to the unique sonic signature of the instrument. So that's crash course on the didge. Any other final remarks before we wrap for the day, my beautiful friends?
I just want to say I really appreciate this. This is awesome. I feel like I got it a little bit. I was able to get the fundamental going, I think, really well, and getting some of the rhythmic stuff that was going on. So I think next for me would probably just be the circular breathing. That's probably the next thing I'm just gonna work on. But I'm super happy. I just got this PVC pipe yesterday, so yeah.
Beautiful.
So
Can we hear it?
Yeah.
Can we hear it real quick, Austin?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you
Yeah, more relaxed.
Oh, I had it. Now of course,
Okay.
now of course I can get it.
I know, stage pressures. There it is.
I don't think you can hear that at all.
Put on your original sound. Make sure your original sound is on. Upper